Reincarnated. I'm a star, baby. Life goes on and it all my babies. God damn. You haven't heard the Kendrick song, have you?
No.
I can tell because you didn't sing with me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is The Mud Peddlers, a podcast where two nerdy ceramic artists share the behind the scenes of their worlds of clay. We are your hosts, Lindsey M Dillon.
And I am Donte of Earth Nation.
Hey, buddy! Hey! Welcome to The Night Peddlers. I don't know why I suddenly started that like I'm a baseball announcer, but here we are.
The Basement Yard
you
podcast
know what?
all of a sudden.
What we are announcing, though.
What are we announcing?
We are announcing... Well, something that's sort of semi-been announced already.
Yeah.
But Donte, today on The Mud Peddlers, we are hearing the full story of how Red Lotus came into being.
Yes.
And how Donte ended up making it for Clayscapes.
Right.
And so
the Clayscapes company on, I think, March 26th is going to be selling the glaze that I've been working on for the past year, Red Lotus, which went underneath the name of Ancient Greymon for quite some time, but we're going to get into it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask Donte about this story and kind of just go through it start to finish because I think it's a really interesting example of one of the...
Sorry. I'm making faces. That's my fault.
What? That was like straight up Nosferatu demon possession face.
I was making faces because I drank some hot peach tea.
That was crazy town.
Lindsey didn't fumble. That was my fault.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
Well, you made me drop the ball, bro. All the more baseball memes. Anyway, okay, so I thought it was an interesting example of one of the kind of many unique ways that you can make money in the ceramics world. And I think I think it's a relatively rare position that you found yourself in, or not even that you found yourself in, that you've like worked into.
Yeah, I went for it for sure.
Yeah.
I actively been trying to do this for a couple years.
This did not happen by accident.
So Lindsey had made... Do you want to tell them? We talked about it on the Night Peddlers already.
Yeah, we talked about it on the Night Peddlers, but basically I made hardtack and I put some in my tea because it's basically like a rock hard biscuit that I literally had to break with a hammer to get it to break into a few different pieces.
No lie.
So it's like biscotti kind of, but like old timey.
No, it's not like biscotti.
Oh my god. Okay, anyway.
No, it's not.
Listen to the Night Peddlers episode, you'll learn all about it, but I paused because I was trying to fish my little biscuit out of the tea. Anyway.
If you're a patron of the Mud Peddlers, go... See, you can hear it crunching.
No, I'm not going to chew.
That's how hard
camera.
it is. Anyway,
so...
Yeah, so what I wanted to do was to create my own version of a glaze that had been lost. And I did so. It took me a while, but it took me a long time because I had no idea. I had no idea actually what the glaze was or what family it was in.
Yeah. So why don't we start with... just in general, because we know that you took the Rose and Matt Katz's ceramic materials workshop.
I did.
So why don't we talk...
I took the big course too.
You took the major, like, all-inclusive, all the everything, everywhere, all at once?
Because now you can buy, and this is, we're not sponsored by them whatsoever, but you can buy miniature classes, so you can buy them for like close to $100. So you can buy like, I just want to learn a little bit about crystal glazes. And it's one class. And then it sells like 3 or 4 classes within that crystal glaze thing. I paid close to like $1,000
for everything,
for 1 year access of all the classes when my kid was like newborn, and as I took care of my baby, I just sat there, and every night I would just watch it over and over and over again until I understood what he was saying. So
what made you decide to finally like take that? And just for so our listeners know, the table of contents here will generally be like a... How did you get started taking the ceramic materials workshop? How did you get connected with Clayscapes? What was the process like developing this particular glaze? How did you and Clayscapes start working together more, like meeting them at Insika and all that? And then what was the process been like as you guys were working together and honing in this glaze? How did you get to where you are now? So that's kind of generally where we're going to go with this. But of course, it's the Mud Peddlers. We're going to be pedaling our way around a bunch of different things here.
We're going to pedal here and there.
We're going to pedal here and there, yeah.
Pedal right upstream.
Yeah. So, okay, so what made you originally decide to... Oh, wait, sorry. And one last little note, too, is that, like, if you've been following along with the Mud Peddlers, there will probably be a little bit of repeat information because we've basically been following along this journey as it's gone on.
Every month I'm like, there's an update.
Yeah. So but we wanted to kind of just consolidate the whole last story into a like This is how Donte went from, like, learning the chemistry behind glazes to, like, working with and basically becoming the, well, I don't want to spoil it, but basically becoming the position that he is now with his company, which we will discuss later.
And I wouldn't even say it. I don't know if I have, like, a solid position, but I'm definitely trying to become more integrated with them.
Yeah, well, you have a unique relationship with them that I want to get into. So, okay. So, what made you decide to invest, the nearly $1,000 to which I think
if you're a patron of mine personally on Earth Nation Ceramics, you paid for those classes.
Yeah.
100%. This glaze is because of you. 100%.
Oh, hell yeah. That's a really good point to make.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so what made you decide to finally take the ceramic materials workshop?
So at a base, those of you who know how I got into pottery, it's on the YouTube channel, I won't go over it, but I got into pottery, and then I was with Yoshio Taylor for like 4 or 5 years as his apprentice. Realistically, I was in his studio for like a couple classes, and then he was like, you're not bad, I'm going to pay attention to you more. And then sooner or later I found out he has this little group of students that he keeps in the back of his studio to work while he was working, because he's retired now.
Yeah.
And those were like his apprentices, right? And then after that, he pretty much took me to Alpha and dropped me off at his friend Brian's place, who owns Alpha Fire Arts, and was like, stay here. Just keep working here. Pay studio fees and do stuff here. After a couple years of that, I kept looking at this chemical wall, and one of their employees, who I think was the owner's son, I think is the owner now.
Oh, Josh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah!
Yeah, I was like, man, I wish I knew how to make these glazes. As I was buying a bottle of glaze, he goes, you can. I was like, what do you mean? Aren't these like company? He goes, right, but they're just like an amalgamation of the minerals on the back of the wall. See, the back of the wall says like Minspar and Kona and silica. You just mix those powders up in certain ratios and with water, and it makes glaze. I said, that's all it is? It's just dirt in water? Yeah, I mean, it's more complicated than that, but yeah, that's definitely what it is. And then he showed me my first recipe I ever saw, and I think it was Randy's Red.
Oh my god!
And
that's actually very appropriate, knowing where this story goes.
And so he showed it to me, and he goes, you mix them up in here with water, and it makes this color. And I was like, okay. And so I did, and it did not turn out red whatsoever because I didn't know about specific gravity or water to mineral ratios. And from that point on, I just started putting glazes together, and I went online, and I was going on Facebook and getting all the bad information from
As
potters.
one does.
As one does.
Not to say that there's not good information out there on Facebook, for sure.
Here's the thing. 80% of it, trash. 20% of it, amazing. From potters who really know what they're talking about.
Speaking of which, little shout out to Sue McLeod's learning glazes with Sue. That's a very active Facebook group of hers. So I'd say that's in the good 20%.
It's definitely in the good 20%. Yeah. But if you go on just like random Facebook stuff, that's not a cemented group.
Clay Buddies too is fun. That's Tim C's group, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been on there in a while.
Sometimes the random groups will just give you the weirdest stuff. Like the one I always talk about is like, this glaze only works when you make it with rainwater. Like,
oh yeah.
Or like, this glaze only works if you do this and this to it. Like, make sure to glaze your pot, but don't touch it for 12 days. Leave it in the sun, and then I'm like, this is no.
Yeah.
No.
This is some alchemical BS.
Yeah. This is astrology pottery 101.
Astrology pottery.
That's a straw man, but just the vibes are there,
I love it. Yeah.
So after about, I want to say 5 years of making my own glazes, I figured out like, the water content is important, but I don't know how. And you got to sieve your glazes. Does the sieve matter in between 40 and 60? And I had all these things in studio practice, but I didn't have any of the chemistry answers, and I was not a chemistry person whatsoever.
Right.
So I decided to kind of up my game, because at this point I was just doing line tests and making my own glazes by accident. So I would take the base of a glaze, and for anyone who makes glazes, there's the 100%, there's the glaze, and then there's the colorants usually, and they're more than colorants, but we'll call them that for now. And you can kind of mess with those colorants and decrease and increase them and replace them to make different glazes.
Yeah.
And then the base is usually the opacity or the silicon aluminum ratio, so it kind of depends on the base to tell you whether a glaze is going to be translucent, and it usually shows up on the Stoll chart and things of that nature. After a while, I was like, I don't understand. I know in practice how to make my own glazes, but doing line tests isn't enough. And granted,
did you kind of feel like you were wasting time, trying to figure things out?
No, it was good. It was good. It's just I needed to know why, if that makes sense. So I would make a glaze and be like, why? Why inside of my rutile blues is there no cobalt? But I know cobalt makes the color blue.
Yeah.
But I'm making blue on accident without cobalt. Why?
Yeah, why is this happening? Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so I'm very lucky that I had 5 years of just studio practice of making glaze under my belt before I got to the ceramic material workshop classes. Because once I got there, I was like, oh, all of this makes sense to me. All of it makes sense. I think if I didn't know how to make glazes and I didn't have that previous experience and I watched those things, I'd be like, crap, now I have to learn chemistry. But because I took the ceramic material workshop classes, the most powerful things they taught me are specific gravity. They dispelled a lot of myths, right? How to use the Stoll chart and how to use the UMF. After that, I was like, oh, I understand everything now. You know,
they did go into a lot of the chemistry stuff though, right? But it's just that generally speaking, because of glaze calculators and things like that, you just it's the kind of thing where it's when you're in high school and they teach you the slow way to do a certain thing, and then they go, lol, JK, actually you it's important that you know this part because it's a stage, but we're gonna have a calculator do that the whole time.
There definitely was a whole stage where, and granted, I do want to point out it was by Matt and Rose Katz, and they have a team behind them as well, of which I don't know their individual names, but Matt Katz was the one talking to me on the screen the whole time. So when I say Matt, I really mean Matt and Rose. But as you're watching it, he's like, let me show you how to do the UMF and why it's important and what molar amounts are. And he explained what those are. And then he went through it and I was like, damn, that's a lot of math for one recipe. And then 5 minutes later, after a full hour course, he was like, JK, we have calculators now.
Yeah.
And you could most people just put the recipe in and it kind of does the math for you. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, because that would be...
Because I was following along. I was actually following along with him, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this every time.
Too much.
This is why people don't share recipes, because this amount of work, no way.
So you started taking the ceramic materials workshop, not because you necessarily needed to in the practical sense, but you needed to in the knowledge sense of I want to understand the why behind these results that I'm getting in these line tests.
100%. And you can still make glazes without taking the chemistry courses, but you won't understand the inner workings and have enough control over your art form and glazes if you don't understand them on a chemical level. And it's weird because it's I'm always a proponent of more control.
Yeah.
So the more control you have over your art form, the easier it is to express yourself within your own art form. And
it's almost as though knowledge is power.
Almost,
Knowledge is power.
And while I don't want to come from a place of well, you should because then you're a better artist. I think that's conjecture, really.
Yeah.
I think, for me personally, having more control allows me to express myself better. And on a definition note, expressing yourself, more control over your own expression is kind of what people want in the art world. Right? Generally speaking. Yeah, it's arguable.
I don't know. That's a pretty broad statement, but I can say at least on an individual level,
you want to be able to express yourself better, and the way you do that is by having control over your medium.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from. Is that the more control I have, the more I can express myself and make my own individual art. Yeah. And that's what I wanted. And so that's what that class kind of gave me. But there definitely was I'll say, and I'm not trying to badmouth them, but 40% of the course was this is kaolin, and here's the mountain it comes from, and here's how it's produced, and here's, and I'm like, I know that.
Okay.
And here's where the mineral comes from, and they did a really good job at covering here's nephside, here's spodumene.
I would actually really love that, because that's the kind of information that I don't know. That it would be great to have that kind of information.
Where it's this is silica, and silica comes from this, and this, and this, and this, and it showed you the base of where the mineral comes from on Earth. It was pictures of a mountain and stuff, and I'm that's cool. I like that, but where it really got interesting to me is okay, now let me tell you that every mineral is broken down into elements, and every mineral has a different amount of an element in it, and these elements do a certain job in your glaze.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got halfway through the course, I was like, this is what I want. I want to know what sodium does in a glaze. And what family it belongs in, because I had none of that previous knowledge. Anyway, I took the courses, and after that, I got real good at making glazes. Because I understood it initially. I was like, okay, I understand. And I started using Glazy, and I started marking down my glazes, and I started being more communal with my glazes. That's going to stop now. And it's been on a roll, and now it's, especially with the tool of the UMF, it's become pretty easy because I have enough experience to know certain chemical interactions, and I have enough experience to make my own base, so I have my recipes.
Yeah.
Like, when I put a recipe into Glazy, I don't click copy from someone else's recipe.
Right,
I make my own stuff now. And then at the bottom of Glazy, it'll tell you what other recipes are similar to that recipe. I take pride in the fact that mine do not have similar. They don't pop up to anyone else's recipe, you know? Yeah, they're not that close.
Very, very uniquely yours.
I try to purposely make my stuff unique, and... So yeah.
So when did you start working on did you start working on...
You want to call it the Digimon name?
I kind of want to call it the Digimon name, but I'll say what you were originally replacing. So did you start working on replacing or making a glaze to imitate ancient copper before or after you met the folks from Clayscapes?
You know, it was before.
Okay, so how did that process start?
So Amico was like, "Hey, we can't do ancient copper no more. We're not selling it for the foreseeable future." And I think I was just in my egotism, and I was just like, "I'm gonna do it."
Love it.
And it's because I've come across so many glazes that are easy to reformulate with the tool of the UMF and my new understanding of glazes that I was like, I can probably do it.
Yeah.
My problem was I knew nothing about the glaze. Nothing. And so I was shooting in the dark for a long time.
Yeah.
So throughout the journey, I was in between the journey of making it and not. And I have a contact at Amico, and I kept asking her, like, what is this damn glaze? Like, what's the... And she wouldn't tell me anything. She told me literally nothing about it.
Yeah.
As is her job. They're not supposed to, which is great.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of on my own to make this glaze. And then I went to Ensika, the one you went with me, I think.
Yes, and that was...
2021?
No, I think that was 2020... That was 2023.
Yeah, and then...
Yeah. Because 2022 was in Sacramento. 2023 was in Ohio, Cincinnati.
Right. And then in that, we were in our house with like... the April house or the Nico house. We were in that house, and then they know Tim C. Tim C's usually in the house with us. And then Tim C is, well, I don't say that, but... And then we had...
Connected to...
Yeah, we essentially had dinner with someone who is, kind of runs Clayscapes, and I didn't even know about Clayscapes at the time.
Yeah, I didn't really either. Like, I was vaguely aware that there was a company somewhere in, like, Central or Southern California.
Yes.
That, where you could order pounds of the dry glaze material and then add water, because I had kind of been running into the issue where, like, I really didn't want to learn the kind of stuff that you were learning, because it's just like...
Took a lot.
It was a lot, and it's just not really where my interest lies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, I would rather pay a bit more money, but I'm also not... the disparity between, all right, buying 4, Amico bottles of saturation gold, or whatever, like that, actually,
it's like $60
technically
plus.
I still do that, since I haven't found a replacement for saturation gold. But point being, like,
okay,
if I could
I'll figure it out for you tomorrow.
Bless. Excellent. Yeah, tomorrow. By tomorrow.
Give me 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah,
2 weeks is usually
okay, all right. Anyway, so I was only vaguely aware of that there was a company. I didn't know that it was Clayscapes.
Yeah.
So what was it like meeting the folks from Clayscapes the first time?
We were just hanging around, and I was having a fatty day, and I was ordering dessert, and you were there, and like we had dinner, and it was a big old like Harry Potter style table. And
it was fun.
We were eating and whatnot, and I was talking, and the guy across from me was Drew, who's a part of Clayscapes, and I was talking with him, and I was like, he's like, yeah, me and my dad run the Clayscapes company, and I was like, Clayscapes? I don't know what that is.
What is?
What is? Yeah, I know about Amico, Mud Tools, and Coyote, and then like Laguna, and I barely ever see Laguna anymore. You know? And no, we got to talking, and we started talking about other stuff, and we started talking about like lithium, and I was like, the problem with lithium is that it's water soluble, so you're not getting all the work out of it that you would, because some of the minerals are traveling with the water and it's going into the pores. And he was like, oh, okay. I think he had a bit of like, oh, okay, so you like doing...
Yeah.
You like doing glaze chemistry stuff. And I was like, yeah, I have a big problem with lithium, and I switched over to Fritz 644 and substituting with spodumene and whatnot. And so if I see a recipe with spodumene and lithium, and we started talking back and forth. And I think that's when we connected, like, oh, we both make glazes.
Yeah.
Except for he has a lot less time on his hands.
because he's basically helping to run this larger company that has a lot of other things to worry about than just glaze composition. Course, I mean, not that you also don't have a lot of things like to worry about.
I don't have running a company for sure. That's for sure. And so, over the course of that time, we didn't talk for quite some time. And then I went through this like year-long journey of like trying to figure out what ancient copper was. And I didn't know. I just want to say, Tim C. F. Tim C. I showed him the glaze and he told me the family of glaze it's in before I actively told him what it is. So the day I succeeded in making the glaze, I was like, Tim, I finally did it. And I showed him the glaze and he was like, oh yeah, that's this, and this. And I was like, you mother effer!
Years of experience, I guess.
He just has a lot of experience. He just knows, realistically. And so the trail essentially went, which sucked so hard because I bought myself a little tester kiln just so I could do tests faster because I have a KMT Scut 1027 and I can't do tests in that. So I bought like a Scut little firebox. Not sponsored by Scut, but also holla. And I start firing stuff and then I learned I needed to offset my kiln because the heat work isn't the same inside of a tiny kiln as it is inside like a bigger kiln. And so my more delicate glazes weren't coming out right. Or they'd cool down much faster.
Yeah.
And then as I took more classes, and I bought like the 7,500 glaze book from Matt and Rose Cat. They basically have a glaze book that's a bunch of glazes tests.
Okay.
They just put all their tests out there, and they're like, we're gonna sell it as a glaze book.
Oh wow. Oh cool. Okay.
And
at 7,500 is that's the number of glazes that are in this book.
The number of tests.
Number of tests. Oh wow.
Yeah, and I don't use any of those glazes, but it was a lot of good information for me, right? And I just got more and more and more. And so for the first, 3 months, I was like, I got it. It's probably a tin chrome red.
Huh. I remember that time.
You remember that time?
I do remember that time.
And then I started being like, well, maybe there's a bit of iron in it. Right? And so it was another 2 months of maybe it's iron chromate. And it wasn't.
Maybe it was yellow iron oxide instead of red iron oxide.
Right, and then I started messing with yellow iron oxide instead of red iron oxide. And although most iron oxides are relatively the same, it's easier to count in the chemistry and the molar amounts of yellow than it is black and red for me. And then there's a question of red iron oxide and its purity.
Right.
Because when I pick up a bag of red iron oxide, they always say high purity. But your definition of high purity is different.
Yeah, is high purity 90%? Is it 80%?
Is it 98%?
What's that other percentage?
What is it?
Yeah. We talk about that in some of our other previous glaze, and I think some of our meet the ingredients episodes as well. So. And
then I started to do a loss on ignition test where I fire my red iron oxide. I weigh it, I fire it, and then I reweigh it to see the loss amount once it gets to a certain temperature. Loss on ignition, and then you would see the things that burn off versus the pure element, the pure iron. And so I learned that my yellow iron oxide is 90% pure. So the definition of high purity is questionable.
Yeah.
I wanted 95% or more. And I start testing other iron oxides, and every single time I did something towards the recipe, I would essentially put it in my blog at earthnationceramics.com.
Yeah.
So there's a whole strring of blogs that's just my journey.
Yeah.
It's damn near a college dissertation on I know nothing about this and now I know too much about it.
It really is. Honestly, I think about it sometimes and I'm part of me is some university give this man an honorary master's degree because this is crazy town.
Well, it's just I'm sure someone out there already knows this information. I'm sure if I went up to Matt and Rose and told them all this info, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we know that too. People have to pay us to know that."
Yeah.
You just for some reason you're blogging it. People pay us for that information.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, okay. Yeah. I guess.
Which is, I mean, yeah, it's a whole interesting thing to think about, what you keep behind a paywall, what you don't. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, and we'll probably have that discussion as an episode sometime.
For me, it's more of a conversation about being taken advantage of. So it's once people start taking advantage of your free work, then it's and calling it their own. Then you're like, okay, now I have to keep it.
Yeah. Did you ever think about giving up? Because I remember
there was a moment.
Okay.
There was a moment where I was like, I'm just gonna keep buying ancient copper.
Yeah. Because at one point the glaze company came out with a replacement at one point because it seemed like some mineral or something, they weren't able to get it. Because they're ancient. Because ancient, they were like, okay, there's no more ancient copper.
There's no more.
And it was oh god,
for the recipe are no more. We have to
reformulate it. And so it was off the market for a while. But I thought that it was going to be gone forever. I didn't realize that there was going to be a replacement. And so I remember when the replacement came out, and I also remember a few times where you were like, I got it, Lindsay, I figured it out. And then like a couple months later, you were like, actually, never mind.
I don't even care anymore, Lindsay. I was just like, F this glaze, man.
Yep.
And so from the point at which I thought it was a tin chrome red, it wasn't. And then I thought it was a iron chromate tin, it wasn't. Then I was like, well, there's crystals in there, so it must be a crystal glaze. And so I started combining high levels of zinc and low levels of silica and alumina, which are usually crystal glaze magics, like Fripp 3110, which I don't really like, to be honest with you. I like 644 better. And then I started doing zinc to make like little crystal nucleations. But I was like, man. And I sat on that for like 4 months.
Oh my God.
Until one day I talked to a buddy of mine, shout out Rain, and he was like, oh yeah, iron and zinc don't like each other. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, it's really hard to make glazes with iron and zinc. That for some reason they don't like each other. I don't know why. It's bigger chemistry than I'm willing to go for right now, but they don't like each other. He said iron and zinc and cobalt, on the other hand, love each other. He goes, but iron and zinc don't like each other. And I ignored his advice. And so I just kept on ramping up the amount of zinc and iron. It never worked. What? I got very few crystals, and of them, none of them were like ancient copper whatsoever.
What made you get past that hurdle of, screw it, I'm just going to keep buying ancient copper?
So at this point, it was like 7 or 8 months after I decided, I told everybody, like, I'm doing ancient copper.
Yeah.
Then they came out with the secondary rendition, the new version, and I was like, that's it. I'm dead. That's it. I was like, it's already done. What's the point of it now? Because I was going to do it for the community.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that the new ancient copper is like some kind of weird purplish.
Oh.
And the old ancient copper is like red.
Yeah.
And I sat there for a good like hour with Minecraft on in the background, looking at them, and I was like, why is it red? What makes red? Why is it red? Why is this one purple? And then I figured it out. I was like, they have to be an iron base. There's nothing else that makes this color of red except for red base and stains and actual iron.
Yeah.
This has to be iron base.
So it sounds like the thing that kept you going when you thought about giving up was just pure mad curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what I did is I started doing line tests with one of my bases. I have 3 or 4 bases. I have a matte base, a translucent base, and then I also have something called Donte's base. That's if you ever see a really good phase separation glaze on my Glazy account, that's like what I use for my base.
Phase separation being basically when you can look at a glaze and it kind of looks like it has layers to it.
Yeah, layers and color mostly, right? Where they develop at different times, kind of. And I started doing a line test, and I noticed the glaze when I was blending up the iron would go from like brown, and then I add more iron, and then it would turn purple, and then I'd add more iron, and it would turn red. And I was like, okay, so the one on the right has to have less iron because it's purple than the one on the left. It has to be iron. It has to be iron. And then, man, I'm so sorry. This is a long story. So then at the end of it, I was like, I'm just gonna start treating this like a crystal glaze, but only with iron. And that's what did it. So I essentially got a base of a glaze, had a really low alumina, really low silica, and I started putting iron in there. And then I started noticing iron crystals. And I was like, oh, this is what makes the crystals. I'm making crystals out of pure iron. And then I started testing it. I even gave you some of the tests.
Yeah.
So I would get brown with some crystals, or then I would get crystals, but the crystals would run.
Yeah.
2 things I didn't know. Number 1, this is called a deep iron saturated khaki glaze. And it's one of the most notoriously difficult glazes to make and hone in the glaze maker space. The amount of glaze makers I've talked to that are like, no, I gave up because it's ass. It's difficult to do. I talked to about like 7 or 8 that are just like, no, I gave up.
Oh, wow.
It's too difficult. So finding out that it was a deep iron saturated khaki glaze, first and foremost, was good. Finding out that deep iron saturated khaki glazes are in a family of low alumina, low silica, relatively high iron was second. And then you have to balance the silica to alumina levels to get the right amount of energy to develop the iron crystals but not make them run. And then
God.
Yeah, and that took a couple months. And then you have to balance the alkali metal to alkali earth ratios to make sure you don't have so much metal flux that it essentially, for lack of a better term, burns out the iron, but also gives it enough to develop crystals so they nucleate. So it was a couple of like maybe 4 or 5 more months of testing to be like, okay, adding 2 more grams of EPK makes a huge difference.
Oh, wow.
2 more grams. And then it was another month.
And that's out of like 100-gram test batch.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it was like, okay, adding lithium. And then I was like, no, I can't do lithium because lithium's not dependable enough because it's water soluble. And then, you know. I don't know what Amoco is missing. I think I know. And Amoco did not talk to me about this at all. This is pure conjecture. I want to say that right now.
Yeah.
I do not know if Amoco was missing talc, if it was missing lithium, if it was missing a certain purity brand of iron that worked for them that made their glaze. I don't know what it was, but it's clear to me that they were missing a mineral and had to redo it because of that. And it seems like their new glaze comes out a little bit darker, and that's about it. It's pretty much the same. Chemically, it's damn near the same. I bet if I had the recipe, which I don't, I would be able to be like, oh yeah, that matches pretty well with your old recipe. Which I don't have that either. But for some strange reason, some chemical reaction, it comes out a little bit darker on even like my B mix with grog, right? And I've tested it on every clay body I have. I've done it on dragon fruit, porcelain, my cone 10, my cone 6. I fired in other people's kilns. I fired it to make sure, and I made a YouTube video out of it. I made sure that I put it through the ringer, and the only difference is it's a tiny bit darker, but people really like that brightness about it.
Yeah.
And so after all that, I finally figured out what it was, and then once I figured out what it was, throughout the course of doing this, I developed a really good mind for figuring out what makes reds in cone 6 oxidation.
Okay.
I figured out the molar amounts, the bounds. So I have about 5 red glazes under my belt right now, and Clayscapes was like, we're looking for a good red right now.
So had you been frequently communicating with Clayscapes during this time, just kind of as professional kind of colleagues? Like, what was the level of conversation that you were having with Clayscapes before you found out that they were looking for a red?
We played Minecraft together for a bit.
Oh, I love that!
Yeah, because, you know.
Yeah.
Because I like Minecraft, and so, and then I would send Tim and Drew memes. And that's our level of communication.
I love that so much
on Instagram. But it's, you know, he was like, I'm looking for a good red. My plan was to go to NCECA 2025 and give him a list of glazes and be like, these are all my really good glazes. Do you want to buy any? Do you want to produce them for me and give me a cut of the profits? Instead, he came up to me and was like, I noticed that you made a good red glaze. We're looking for one right now.
Oh, wow.
We're looking for something like that. And
so you had been planning on reaching out, but not for a little while
Not for like 6 more months.
Okay.
And then he kind of reached out. And
when was the first time that he reached out specifically about the red glaze?
Probably, I don't know, like 8 from this day, like 8 months ago, probably.
Okay.
At the end of or the mid of 2024.
Mid 2024, okay.
Yeah, and then I was like, yeah, absolutely. My whole plan was to give the recipe out to everybody, so everybody could have it. But firstly, I thought that would piss off Amoco, so I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. Secondly,
I mean, I could kind of see, like, if you called it ancient copper, like, that'd be messed up. But also, like, you clearly developed this own glaze, and it's clearly different than what they have, so I could see...
I'm pretty sure it's not anywhere near the recipe they had.
Yeah.
It's in the same family. I don't think it's the exact...
Yeah.
Like, if I saw the recipe, I'd be like, oh, I'm like 10 grams off.
Yeah.
On top of that, to be realistic with you, I had been creating glazes up to that point and releasing them to the public, and there are a handful of people that will essentially take my glazes and rename them after themselves and then repost them publicly and take credit for it.
Which is so messed up, dude. Just, like, don't do that.
Well, I mean, it's too late now. Cause, like,
No, I mean, I know it's too late now, but for any listener who's ever thought about doing that, which, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably too cool to do some bullshit like that, but...
I mean...
Anyway,
there was even an instance where I released a recipe, and then I was like, a lot of people are claiming it as their own, so I'm going to take it down. And then one of my personal followers were like, I don't want you to take it down. So they just ripped the whole thing and posted it on their page. They kept the name and everything. They kept the pictures and everything. They, like, screenshotted everything and all the information. But I was like, well, now, even if I take my own glaze down, now it's still going to be up there.
That's still messed up, Yeah, anyway.
Knowledge belongs to the people, but, like, went way too far with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even your knowledge!
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the things, and again, like, this probably deserves its own full episode, which we'll get to, but...
Right.
I think it is, like, yes, knowledge should be spread, but also we don't live in a society where, like, people can do that and also eat and have healthcare and have their, like, feed their family and stuff, so...
I'm not for property being privatized, but I'm for private property, if that makes sense. Like, I think the things you own should belong to you, but I don't think you should privatize it to such an extent where, like, it never has access.
Yeah, we don't want the United Corporation of America.
Yeah, I don't want Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But
so yeah. So okay, so they reached out. So you had spent all this time developing this glaze.
They reached out.
Clayscapes reached out. You originally thought you were going to give it away, but that doesn't. Given from what the behavior you'd seen. A
couple people pissed me off. That's pretty much it. A couple of people some people shit in the ice cream.
And
now we can't eat around the ice cream.
Now we can't eat around the ice cream.
You've contaminated all the ice cream.
So what were the next steps? Because I think that's something that I'm really curious about. That like what is the etiquette around how did you develop the contract? What was that back and forth conversation like when you were okay, let's do business together? What was that like?
So it had to go through the testing phases first. So I gave him about 4 recipes, and I was like, one of these 4 recipes will probably work for you, and while you work on the recipe, I will continue to work on it myself. So he tested about 4 recipes and said, hey, this one works best. We did 2 or 3 line tests, probably maybe 3 or 4.
Did you sign any contracts before you gave him those recipes, or was it more of like a handshake?
We signed an NDA. It was a handshake and then an NDA. So he sent me an NDA contract. So I legally can't tell you the recipe.
Oh, right. And this is before you sent him the recipes for him to do the testing.
Yeah, it was around the same time. It was like the same day. I signed the contract and then he also put in the contract by the way, if at any given time you can say stop selling my recipe, and we just will.
Oh, good.
We'll delete the recipe essentially. It's all yours. You have creative freedom over your own recipe, which I really appreciated. And I was like, cool. Gave him the recipe. He did a couple line tests. He figured out which one he likes more. The crazy bonus action about this.
Bonus action.
Love
it.
Is that when he got the recipe, I kept working on the recipe to make it better. So I would change the recipe by a gram here and a gram there to make it more suitable for cone 5.5 or cone 6 by a gram or 2. And so by the time he was cool, we've tested the recipe, we love this one. I've already sent it out to my Clayscape studio. They're playing with it. Everyone really likes it. And I like that. He said that because I get that from some of the people at Clayscapes who take classes there, actively follow my YouTube channel. And they'll comment down below and be like, no, we actively play with this glaze. We love it.
Oh my God. Oh, that's so cool.
We've been using it for a couple weeks now, and we actually do really like this glaze. So, we talked back and forth. He was like, where did you get your minerals from? So we could source them from the proper places. And there was one point where he was like, we got it. We locked it down. In a couple months, we're going to start talking about it. And by the time NCECA 2025 comes out, it's going to be able to be sold from our website. And then we're going to give you X amount of money per X, And I was like, cool. That sounds great. And then I also have a discount code with them, which is Earth10. So anytime you shop clayscapespottery.com, use Earth10, check out. And that helps a lot, too. The crazy part is, after he locked it down, I was like, wait, I have a better version of it. He's like, no. We're not doing more testing.
I was like, no, we got it. No, we got it. You're done. You're done.
And he was like, anything you do from this point on is you. You can make the glaze as better as you want.
Yeah.
But we're not... The recipe you gave us, we've already tested tons of times, and we're good. We got it locked down. It works great. We like it. And of course, I'm over here like, but I have a better one.
Yeah.
I changed it by 2 grams, and it's much better now. And he's like, no.
Stop it.
No.
Stop it.
Yeah, so... And of course, it wouldn't have stopped there. I would have made a better one.
Of course.
So I now have a different recipe from what I sold him, but the one I sold him works great still.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so now we're here where now the day has come, and my glaze will be sold from Clayscapes. I also helped them reformulate. He told me that I can tell you guys this. I also helped them reformulate Coastal Blue.
Oh, yeah.
They were having a problem with Coastal Blue, and I was like, give me 2 weeks. And so I went on the UMF. It's more complicated. It's one of those things where, the last episode I said, just make sure the numbers match up in the UMF. Yeah. But the glaze... It wasn't that simple. Because the UMF never tells the entire story.
Of course. And we said that in our last episode about replacing quote-unquote extinct ingredients.
That's why I was so iffy on the UMF talk, is because the way I made it seem was just use the UMF and everything's okay. And that's not true. Yeah. You really...
That was Baby's first introduction to, generally how you approach this, but then testing is required. Anyway.
Right. And so they... I helped them out with that. And so now they have a new formulated Coastal Blue that... I don't know whether to use the terminology of... seems to be, but I made it more stable. I was like, this just needs to be more stable. I know everybody likes the drippy droppy. I know everybody likes how drippy Coastal Blue is and how damn runny it is. But I can give you the same color while being more stable.
Yeah. So still kind of keeping some of the runniness, but not quite so...
You get the same... In fact, you can probably put one more layer of Coastal Blue on your stuff than you were before and still get the same effect, but it will be more stable.
Yeah.
Because wham, that glaze. That glaze was a monster, I'm telling you. But in 2 weeks, we reformulated it, and it's out, and it's good.
And they paid you for that as well?
I cannot...
Or was that like a... Or you cannot confirm nor deny?
I can't confirm nor deny that.
Okay,
Because I be asking for weird stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not always money.
Okay. That makes it sound really suspicious, Donte.
No, it doesn't!
I'd be asking for weird stuff, and it's not Donte.
No, it's just here's a good example. Right? Like one of our friends, our mutual friends, I'm not gonna say her name, wants to use my kiln next week, and she was like, "How much do I owe you?" And I said, "Just bring me a bottled Coke."
Oh yeah. No. I mean
stuff like I want T-shirts and hats.
Yeah.
I mean, money is good, but I also like.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it makes sense that for like.
Give me a Clayscapes hat, bro.
Oh yeah.
I'll wear that till the wheels fall off.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's like, I guess part of the reason I'm curious about that is because I think like there's the nominal thing of course, like get paid for your labor, right?
Yeah.
But there's also, especially if you already have an established relationship with someone, where there can, as long as it's still within respectful bounds, and again, everyone kind of needs to figure out for themselves what that is. Like, we sometimes will do things differently. Like, I will give, discounts to folks that I,
oh, yeah.
that I
like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, in terms of, like, if there's a business that I've worked with and, they want something small that, like, okay, well, we've worked together before, so I'll do you a favor. So I like to kind of talk about, that's, like, one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about this, is because sometimes those little things like that, if you are in a similar situation yourself, you might be wondering, like, is this normal, or like, is this okay? And I mean, not to say whether, like, I don't think we're trying to make a judgment call on like whether doing small favors like that. And again, we're not talking about illegal shit. Like, don't do illegal shit. But like, if I see that face.
I didn't make a.
But if I know.
There's some minerals I can't buy without being on a list, and it bugs me.
Yeah, I know.
I
know. But anyway, but that's like part of the thing I wanted to ask about is like, so okay, so I remember years ago, you told me that your like dream as a potter,
dude,
was to have kind of like a old Renaissance style patron artist thing where you were just on somebody's essential payroll, not like necessarily literally as in you completely work for this person.
Yeah.
But it kind of seems like that's a little bit come to pass. Like, I would
love to be on retainer.
Yeah.
I would love it.
It kind of seems like that's in the cards. I mean, again, like, you guys will figure out what your working relationship will be like. You guys have the contract at least for Red Lotus, and
if the glaze sells well, I hope, and I don't know if this is true, I hope they would buy more glazes from me because, oh yeah, that reminds me.
Ooh. That's pretty.
That's my newest glaze, called Meadow Garurumon. It is one glaze.
No shit.
That is one glaze.
Oh my god, sorry, I'm like leaning into the camera. Or leaning into the thing. It's it looks a little bit like floating blue, but it's more matte and it has more like yellow sort of microcrystals.
Two things. No cobalt in that whatsoever.
That's amazing.
No Gersley borate in that whatsoever. No lithium in that whatsoever. And that is one glaze.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Can I have some?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Dude, that's really
beautiful. I made some for one of my
students
yesterday. I made 100 grams. He saw it and he was like, that. Well, I can't say what he said because.
Yeah.
He was like, oh.
That's beautiful, dude. Oh my god.
And so that's the one I'm hoping to like toss to them next year.
Yeah.
I'm like, make this, please. Make this. And so I don't know if they're going to continue to buy more glazes, but the way I see it is that there's certain glaze companies that have teams of nerds like me in the back who are just constantly making glazes.
Yeah.
I don't know if Amico has this, but Amico must have a pretty knowledgeable team of glaze designers because they come out with a new line of glaze like every freaking 3 months, I swear to God. And so I think either they're rehashing old recipes. I don't know this for sure. But they're either rehashing old recipes and making them more functional by just kind of like getting a recipe and then making it better, or they're making a new line. And so they'll make like a phase separation glaze. And then they'll add colorants and mason stains to it. And then they'll call it their phase separation glaze line. I don't know that for sure. That's just what I'm guessing. but they come out with them so fast.
Yeah, Amico is very prolific with their glazes.
I don't know if every glaze company, especially that of Clayscapes, has that. Like a bunch of nerds in the back doing tests for them. Mm-hmm. And I would love to be one of those nerds.
Yeah.
I would love to be one of those nerds.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of glaze companies, and again, this is conjecture, I don't know if every company is just riding off of the back of old glazes that have been circulating the popular culture, like Floating Blue and Randy's Red, and they're just making them and calling them different things. Mm-hmm. Or...
I mean, they have enough other... I feel like there's enough variety in the kind of glazes where it seems like... I mean, there's just a lot of new glazes coming out, kind of all the time.
There's a lot, but there's only like... This is a shot in the dark, but there's like 20 families of glazes. Mm-hmm. Like Tenmoku Gold, Oil Spot Reds, and Deep Iron Saturated Khaki Reds, all to me are all in the same family. Mm-hmm. They're just different levels of alumina and silica, but their chemistry is all relatively the same as far as molar amount goes. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at a glaze like, I don't know, like Randy's Red, or if I look at like a floating glaze, like Floating mm-hmm. Blue, I'm like, you could probably make other floating glazes if you mess around with the colors, and then call that whole line the floating line.
Yeah.
I think that's what most glaze companies are doing, but I mean,
to some degree, that's almost like what you've done with your reds. Like you talked about having 5 different other red options.
No, they're all different
for them to choose from. You know, but I mean, they're kind of within the same family. So
they're all within the same family. They're mm-hmm. just all different opacities. But I really wish I knew that information before I developed them on accident, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not accidentally, but I got lucky for sure. Mm. Yeah. And so now Clayscapes is going to sell one of the glazes. Next year, I don't know what glaze I'm hoping to give them that one.
That's so exciting.
And if you meet me at Ensika, I will have a test of this glaze. And I'll
this glaze that we are discussing on the podcast presently?
Well, the one that I call Metal Gurumon, I made 30 of these.
Oh, cool. Oh, fun.
I'm going to give them out during Ensika.
Ooh, all right. You're hearing it, listeners. You go get him first.
If you find
But don't swarm him. Don't swarm Don. Don't overwhelm him.
Don't.
He's a tender boy.
I fart when I'm nervous.
Oh, no. Well, at least we know from...
And when I'm fed milk.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Actually, when you think about it, I fart a lot.
Yeah, I do when I don't eat good.
You fart when you don't eat good?
I fart when I don't eat good. Because my body goes, why? Sorry. All right, so what's next for you, Donte? Donte, do people know your last name? I'm not going to say. I was going to say your first and last name, interview style. I'm not going to say it.
Don't say my government name.
Donte of Earth Nation Ceramics. What?
I've had to give up my other names.
What is the next for you for glazes? So you have this one that you're developing. Do you have any other crazy, like, oh man, what's the next long-term research project for you? Or is it just for now you're like you're gonna be working on some glazes to work with Clayscapes with, and kind of just seeing where things go? My
goal is to make one a year. My goal is to go up to a glaze company, because other companies have contacted me, but Clayscapes is the one that I seem to work the most with.
Yeah.
My goal is to go to Clayscapes or another company once a year and be like, do you want to buy this glaze? Mm-hmm. And then keep on getting dividends off that.
Yeah.
But for right now, what I'm looking at is making a matte base so that I can make some matte glazes. Mm-hmm. But I have to... It's going to take longer because I've never really dealt with matte glazes. The last one I made crazed.
Oh, okay.
And I can't have that. Mm-hmm. I need to make a glaze that's versatile enough with its thermal expansion to deal with the most common clay bodies, like B-mix with grog, porcelain, and red clays. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. That's all. I'm probably going to... That's a lie. I'm probably going to calm down on the glaze making.
Ha!
Yeah.
Ha!
Right?
That and other lies I tell myself.
I know. And then that's kind of it. I did make a glaze class on my website, earthnationceramics.com, for about $50 or $60 if you know nothing about glazes whatsoever. It'll teach you how to weigh specific gravity. It'll teach you how to put a glaze together. It'll give you a free glaze recipe, and it'll teach you how to make textiles. But that's probably where I'm going to stop with making glaze classes for a while. Mm-hmm. I think the next one is like, this is how you do a line test, and then I'll give you homework. But that another $50 in a couple years. You know? But it's very self-regulating. Like, you watch the videos many times as you want. It's a 1 hour video, $50-$60. You're good.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And that's it.
All right. Well, that's a crazy journey from
It is.
From taking the ceramic materials workshops to going, I can do that with with ancient copper, to testing, to
I couldn't be a
kind
liar.
of randomly sort of going, and meeting Clayscapes, and then playing Minecraft together and continuing to research, and then
I wish they had more time, because I would love to play Minecraft with Drew, and I would love to be like, every Wednesday we play Minecraft.
No,
this doesn't work.
I'd love that for you.
I would love that.
You should join my Valheim server.
Your what?
My Valheim server.
I can't have more things.
You say that, but
like the LARPing thing. I want to LARP a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Can't have too much of a life.
Yeah, but like Valheim, you could just pop on for like an hour sometimes. You could see my road. I built a really nice road.
Can you crouch in Valheim?
Yes, you can sneak attack.
Sneak attack. I'm talking about teabagging.
Oh. Yeah.
If you can crouch, I'm there.
Okay. All right.
Crouch.
All right, Donte. Thank you so much for sitting down for basically this interview.
I'm sorry this was such a Donte heavy.
I mean, this was literally like the point of this episode is like to just talk to you about this particular experience, because like I don't know very many other like ceramic artists who have, or at least I have not been able to witness like this journey, and so it felt like a good time. This felt like a good time not only to like shout out and really hype up the fact that you've got this new glaze that's coming out that's going to be bringing in some cash. It's bringing some good things your way.
Daycare need to be paid for pretty soon, folks.
Daycare's good soon.
Daycare gonna be in at least a year when you pay for that daycare.
It's coming. So no, it seemed like a good time to shout that out and to just kind of share. Just to kind of see one of the many pathways that folks can make money in the arts and make money in ceramics, even though it's kind of a very unique path that you have ended up on this. It definitely seems like one of those things where even though you had the sort of background goal of wanting to have like a patronage sort of relationship with making glazes, the path from how you got from A to B to C was, you can't always predict this stuff. And in fact, most of the time you can't. So it's really cool to see where this has gone for you the last year or so.
It would have been so raw if Amico called me and was like, hey, will you just make new glazes for us? Make lines of glazes and, we'll keep you on retainer. But I think they have a bunch of me.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like in their studio already.
Oh, who knows?
I think.
Probably. Something like that.
They probably have a bunch of me in the studio.
Well, now Clayscapes has you. So.
No, definitely.
And
let me wear that
Clayscapes
merch.
is pretty good. Yeah, get that merch.
I want to wear the merch.
I kind of want to get some. I'm definitely going to be ordering some of your Red Lotus. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry it was such a Donte heavy episode. I talked for like an hour.
Apologizing.
I feel so bad.
Stop apologizing.
I listen to our podcast sometimes.
This part's getting cut out. Because every 3 episodes you're like, I'm sorry, it's so Donte. I'm like,
and then I continue to talk more.
No.
I'm sorry.
Oh my god. All right. Go buy Red Lotus, guys. That's your call to action. Bye.
Bye.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Mud Peddlers. We would love to hear from you, so if you want to share your thoughts about the episodes or just see what Donte and I are working on in our studios, come say hi. You can find links to my social media at lindseymdillon.com. That's LINDSEY, M as in monster, DILLON.com.
And you can visit my pottery shop or see what I'm working on at earthnationceramics.com. And you can find me all over social media at Earth Nation Ceramics. It's spelled exactly how you think it's spelled.
And if you want to support the show, hear some bonus episodes, and see some behind the scenes of my work, you can support me and the show at patreon.com/Lindsey M Dillon. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.